Well, welcome back to the next big story as we explore Highland Copper, a company perfectly positioned to accelerate the energy transition, trading on the TSXV under HI and the OTCQB under HDRSF. This video is disseminated on behalf of Highland Copper, and we're privileged to be joined by Barry O'Shea, the Chief Executive Officer. First and foremost, welcome, sir.
Thank you. It's nice to be here, Kyle.
Yeah, such a pleasure to get you on, especially on the back of your stock doing very well. We're in kind of this commodities renaissance. Maybe for newer audiences, we're just stumbling into Highland Copper. Give us kind of that high level overview. What exactly is going on with you?
Yeah, listen, I would characterize our Copperwood project as one of the most advanced copper developers in the US. And so, what does that mean? Obviously, we've completed our feasibility study. We've actually initiated early site work, acknowledging we haven't made a full construction decision at this point. We've awarded all of our detailed engineering contracts, very important as we think about defending ourselves in a project finance. And this is really critical in the US, where, that near dated nature of obviously gives you access to capital, against the backdrop of it taking, the best part of 20 years to build a mine in the US. So there's real intrinsic value here, about 3.7 billion pounds of copper. And what I would say, Kyle, is our most key differentiator is the fact that we have permits in hand, a major de-risking factor that puts time on our side.
Now, zooming in a little bit, how do you see the company contributing to both Michigan's economy and the broader US critical minerals strategy over the next decade?
Well, let's start with Michigan. I mean, we all know it's an industrial state. Michigan, the likes of Ford and GM, quite simply need copper. The US needs power. The US needs contribution into their defense needs. So there's a major impact from a critical mineral strategy standpoint. And also in Michigan, in an area that is a historic mining district, there's also this incredible regional benefit from a jobs perspective, indirect expenditure, and tax. This is a real win-win, I would say, for the US and for Michigan.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind kind of getting your broad view on the metal as a whole. I mean, from my perspective, it's probably one of the most underappreciated metals when it comes to the electrified future. We're talking EVs, renewables. I mean, the whole infrastructure behind everything that's currently going on. But I mean, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, as you hear quite often, copper is literally used in everything. You touch it, it probably has copper in it. Listen, it's well documented that there's a pretty massive global supply demand imbalance with respect to copper. And if you look at the US specifically, that imbalance is even more pronounced. Historically, that imbalance could be dealt with by imports, but of course, geopolitics have changed, and the US has demonstrated more than anyone its desire to be self sufficient. And so domestic mining is becoming increasingly important. What I do like about copper in the US is that it's one of the very few things that is agreed upon from a bipartisan perspective, whether or not you like copper for the perspective of electrification, data centers, AI, otherwise that's one component. But it's also well understood that copper is increasingly critical for defense. Copper was actually identified as the second most widely used material at the Department of Defense. And so you're seeing, good reason why from all areas from political spectrum, copper is becoming important.
Yeah, absolutely. And zooming in again here, you recently divested of your non-controlling interest in the White Pine project. How does this strengthen your ability to execute on the Copperwood project?
For a smaller cap company, it is so important to demonstrate capital allocation, discipline, and focus. So we've done, I think, what good companies do. We've not used dilutive financings to advance ourselves. Rather, we're using the disposition of a non-core asset to fund our primary asset, the Copperwood project. In doing so, this transaction and the most recent one is that we're selling our remaining 34% stake in our non-core White Pine asset. We're receiving $34 million. It's a real strengthening of the capital structure, paying down all of our debt related to that project. And post that transaction, we'll have about 25 million on the balance sheet. And there's a real strategic value to those cash proceeds in that we will be fully funded through engineering, construction readiness, all focused on making a decision here, a construction decision here in 2026. And it's that drive to construction and operations that really drives value through this chain.
Yeah, and I also see you coordinated a block trade in the last year to eliminate some of the trading overhang. I mean, can you kind of give us more background there?
Yeah, listen, as a company, we're trying to do a host of things. Obviously, it's asset first. So, at another point, I'll walk you through some of the great achievements that we've made at the Copperwood project. We've, of course, talked about structure, divesting of a non-core asset, in order to focus on a core asset. But the other piece is on trading. And, when we were making some good achievements through last year, we were realizing we weren't seeing some of the benefit from an equity perspective. And of course, we also knew that getting into the tail end of 2025, we had a 16% stakeholder. That is, they're called Greenstone Natural Resource Fund. They're based out of the UK. They broadly are wrapping up their fund. And we had this overhang of the pending sale of that stock. So in late 2025, we orchestrated a block trade where we traded them out. A number of positive impacts. Of course, we brought in a host of new institutional investors. Of course, eliminated the overhang related to that pending sale, and naturally increased the trading float. And as we step into 2026, we've seen some great improvement both from our liquidity and, of course, from a share price perspective. And I think getting that overhang taken care of has really unlocked the trading of our shares, and we're starting to see the benefit of the good work that we did in 2025.
Okay, no, awesome. So let's look backwards a little bit before we start looking into milestones for 2026. I mean, what was achieved in the last 12 months to demonstrate Highland's ability to execute?
Yeah, of course, we had some great achievements through 2025. Naturally, when you have big achievements there, the function of maybe work over a couple of years. But we're doing all of these things to enhance the credibility of our company as both an operator, but also as a company that can finance the capital project needs. A massive step that we took was that we received a letter of interest from the US Exim Bank for $250 million. That represents about 60% of the capital that we need to build the project. So when you start to see that kind of visibility, of course, it brings confidence to the private markets as you think about building that overall book. We had some really great engineering wins as well. We announced in Q3 of last year an increase in our copper recoveries relative to our stated feasibility study economics. So about a 2 percentage point addition to copper recoveries alongside lower operating costs. So really nice NPV boost to the project, again, relative to our FS. We did some good early site work to prepare the site for a formal construction decision. So some initial clearing, creating a stream diversion structure to create a clean and dry area to build in the future, and doing some really nice environmental mitigations, again, building confidence in state with the permitting authority. Alongside the asset restructure and of course taking care of the block trades here in 2026, we're starting to see the benefit of that good work. And that execution in 2025 is, of course, setting our path as we move here in 2026.
Yeah, can you speak a bit more deeply into that path? I mean, what should investors be paying attention to here from that milestone standpoint, and what are you guys focused on?
Well, we are laser focused on making a construction decision in the near term on the Copperwood project. And listen, at the right time in the US. The US doesn't necessarily need another, exploration find that's long dated 20 years out. They need projects that can be built here in the near term to support the immediate supply demand imbalance. So to drive towards that construction decision, of course, we're advancing our engineering. As I mentioned, we've awarded all of our detailed engineering contracts, driving our engineering to about 40%. The significance there, of course, is that it allows us to make a construction decision and defend ourselves in the technical and financial due diligence as we go through the debt process. We're preparing from an operational readiness perspective, particularly that is putting the team in place as we think about a construction, and most importantly, advancing our funding, both at the state and federal level. We think outside of this LOI that we have with US Exim, there are other pools of capital, and continuing to demonstrate how we put that overall funding package together, again, begins to eliminate some of this discount that we see relative to our net asset value. So well placed with good catalysts through 2026 as we drive to a construction decision.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to again finish up here, I mean, you kind of have a perfect storm going on. The stock's starting to get some attention here. You guys have a lot of execution to look forward to in 2026. Why should somebody be paying attention to the stock today, in your opinion?
Well, maybe the last thing I want to point out is just the leverage to changes in copper price that our project enjoys. It's interesting. We did our feasibility study at a $4 copper price, and acknowledging, we're at $6 today. And amazingly, you'll get a $4 copper price. The project works nicely. It's about 170 million NPV and an 18% IRR. But the returns on net asset value are non-linear as you step up in copper price. So to give you a sense, stepping from a $4 to a $5 copper price actually triples the net asset value to about 500 million, and it nearly doubles again as you step to a $6 copper price. So you have these really great net asset value targets specifically when you think relative to our market cap today, which sits sub 100 million. And of course, as you execute, that also begins to change those discounts. Certainly you've seen producers trading candidly at premiums to net asset value. So there's a real opportunity for this project at the right time, right place in the US, with a good opportunity for value appreciation.
Well, on that note, I definitely appreciate your time today, Barry, as we pass it off to the viewer. If you'd like to explore Highland Copper further, of course, we'll leave the links in the description below, and consider subscribing as news and catalysts come down the wire. Of course, we'll bring it to you here. But on that, as always, we look forward to catching you in the next one.